The tea chunk of chai.
Why do you always work so slowly?
How dare you speak to me like that? You have no idea who I am.
Millionaire CEO insults simple waitress. Minutes later, his 3.5B deal was gone. At a glittering luxury hotel in New York, billionaire CEO Richard Collins sat at the head of a grand table where the final signatures of a 3.5 billion international merger were about to be placed. Every eye in the hall watched his confident smile, but that smile vanished when a simple, young waitress accidentally spilled a few drops of water near his sleeve. Instead of brushing it off, Richard's voice thundered across the room as he leaned forward, glaring at her. "Are you stupid? Can't you even serve water properly?" The room went silent. The investors and diplomats seated at the table shifted uncomfortably, shocked at his cruel outburst. And in that frozen silence, his fate began to unravel. The waitress, Emily Carter, stood trembling, her face pale from embarrassment. She had worked double shifts for months just to pay rent and support her sick mother. The last thing she expected was to be humiliated in front of international leaders and billion-dollar executives. She bowed her head, whispered an apology, and tried to steady her hands. But the insult had already pierced her like a knife. The entire room had seen how a powerful CEO treated a powerless young woman for something so small. Richard, however, smirked, thinking nothing of it. To him, she was invisible, someone who didn't matter. But that very moment would change everything. Across the table sat Hiroshi Tanaka, the Japanese billionaire who was about to sign the merger. Known worldwide not only for his wealth, but also for his strong belief in honor, humility, and respect, Hiroshi had built his empire on values Richard clearly lacked. Hiroshi's eyes followed Emily as she quietly stepped away. Her shoulders slumped. He could still hear Richard's mocking tone echoing in his ears. The insult unsettled him deeply. In his culture, disrespect to another human being, no matter their status, was a reflection of true character. And character to Hiroshi mattered more than money. Richard, oblivious to the storm brewing in Hiroshi's mind, turned back to the table and laughed casually, as if nothing serious had happened. "Now, gentlemen, let's finalize this historic deal," he declared proudly. He was certain that no one would dare challenge him. After all, he was Richard Collins, the man who ruled boardrooms with an iron fist. But Hiroshi's expression remained stern, his hands resting firmly on the unsigned contract. The tension grew heavier with each second, and everyone could sense that something unexpected was about to happen. The waitress's humiliation lingered in the air like a dark cloud. Some of the investors shifted in their seats, uncomfortable but unwilling to speak against Richard. They needed him for profits, or so they thought. Yet Hiroshi Tanaka finally broke the silence. He leaned back slowly and said, his voice calm but sharp, "If this is how you treat the people who serve you, Mr. Collins, I wonder how you treat those who work under you." His words sliced through the air like a sword. Richard chuckled, dismissing the remark. "It was just a stupid girl," he sneered. That single sentence sealed his fate. Hiroshi pushed the documents away. "I cannot in good conscience tie my company's future to a man who sees others as beneath him," he said firmly. Gasps filled the hall. Everyone froze, unable to believe what they had just heard. Richard's face drained of color. "Wait, what are you saying?" he demanded, panic rising in his voice. Hiroshi rose to his feet. "This deal is over," he declared. The translators whispered furiously to the Japanese delegation, who nodded in agreement. Within minutes, the merger Richard had spent years crafting was gone, vanished in the blink of an eye. The boardroom erupted into chaos. Investors shouted, lawyers scrambled to collect their papers, and whispers of disbelief filled every corner. Richard, stunned, tried to argue. "You can't walk away from 3.5 billion because of a waitress." His words echoed in desperation, but Hiroshi did not flinch. "I can," Hiroshi said, "because if money makes you blind to kindness, then money will also blind you to wisdom. And I refuse to follow a blind man." With that, he walked out, his delegation following closely behind him, leaving Richard standing alone in the wreckage of his arrogance. Emily, still shaken, had witnessed it all from the corner of the hall. She never imagined that her humiliation would lead to the collapse of a multi-billion-dollar deal. Tears welled in her eyes, not from sadness, but from a strange mix of relief and vindication. For the first time, she felt seen. She realized that her dignity, which Richard had tried to crush with a single insult, had been defended by one of the most powerful men in the world. That moment planted a seed of courage inside her heart. Meanwhile, Richard's empire began to crumble. The news spread like wildfire. Billionaire CEO loses. 3.5B deal after publicly insulting Waitress. Headlines painted him as arrogant, ruthless, and out of touch. Social media exploded with outrage, condemning his behavior and praising Hiroshi's stand for respect and humanity. Stocks in Richard's company plummeted within hours. His board members, furious at his recklessness, began plotting to remove him as CEO. What Richard thought was a small outburst had turned into the greatest downfall of his career. Emily's life, however, took an unexpected turn. Reporters soon discovered her story. A hard-working young woman, juggling multiple jobs to support her mother. Hiroshi himself reached out quietly, offering to sponsor her education and give her a stable career opportunity. "You have dignity and strength," he told her. "Do not let anyone make you feel small again." Emily accepted his offer, and for the first time, she saw a future that wasn't clouded by endless struggle. She realized kindness could create bridges that arrogance could never build. Richard tried desperately to repair his reputation. He issued public apologies, blaming stress and misunderstanding. But the world had already seen his true face. Once respected colleagues distanced themselves, and invitations to elite gatherings disappeared overnight. His empire, once untouchable, now trembled. He had built it on money, not respect. And without respect, even billions couldn't save him. Richard sat in his empty office, staring at the unsigned contracts, realizing that his downfall had begun with just 2 words, "Stupid girl." Emily, on the other hand, rose quietly from the shadows. With Hiroshi's mentorship, she pursued business studies and later joined his company as a junior executive. She worked tirelessly, her humility and grace winning the respect of her colleagues. Years later, when she spoke at conferences, she often reminded young professionals, "Your worth is not measured by your position, but by your character." Kindness is the greatest currency. Her words carried the weight of someone who had lived through humiliation and witnessed arrogance collapse under its own weight. The story of Richard and Emily became a powerful lesson told across industries worldwide. Business schools used it as a case study in ethics. Leaders cited it as proof that arrogance destroys more than it builds. And Emily herself became a symbol of resilience. The simple waitress who stood quietly yet reminded the world that dignity has no price tag. Meanwhile, Richard faded from the spotlight, a cautionary tale for future generations. Hiroshi continued to expand his empire, but he never forgot the moment he chose honor over profit. "A man's true wealth," he once said in an interview, "is measured by how he treats those who can do nothing for him." His decision to walk away from Richard had not only preserved his values, but had also inspired millions around the world. In the end, his company thrived, while Richard's empire sank into irrelevance. And so, the day that began with a spilled glass of water ended with a shattered empire. A billionaire lost billions, a waitress found her dignity, and the world was reminded that respect is more valuable than gold. Emily often thought back to that night, to the sting of those words, "Are you stupid?" and how they led to the greatest twist of her life. For her, that insult became the spark of transformation. For Richard, it became the first nail in the coffin of his empire.